10 minutes before I walked down the aisle at 72, my future wife's phone lit up. A message flashed. Wire instructions, an itemized list of my assets, and one line, half on wedding day, half after transfer. It was sent by my own son. My name is Richard Hale. I was 72, a widower for 9 years, and a grandfather twice over. I built houses for 40 years and held my family together with the same kind of attention I gave to a plumb line. I was not rich the way magazines talk about rich. I was steady. I owned my home. I kept a shore cabin because my late wife loved the sound of water at night. I put money away so my son would not worry the way I once did. Family meant everything to me. That was not a slogan. It was the way I lived. I believed in the quiet promises people make when they love each other. I believed my son would honor the work behind the things he could touch. I believed I could still build a life, even late. I believed in second chances. I did not know that morning what I would have to believe in by nightfall. The room was quiet except for the muffled music from the courtyard. The florist had left a spray of lilies on a chair. The phone was on the vanity table, face up, buzzing once, then falling still. I do not snoop, but the screen was bright and my name was there. The message preview showed enough to make my stomach shift. I picked up the phone. I read the thread. There were numbers I knew. My house, the cabin, the account that held the pension I had saved and never touched. There were dates. There were phrases that did not belong in a wedding day. Execution, disbursement, my son's name under each line like a stamp. I felt my hands go cold, but my head was clear. I screenshotted the thread with my own phone. I sent the images to my email. I sent them to my cloud. I sent them to myself twice because I have learned what it is to lose something once. I set the phone down and looked in the mirror. I saw a man in a suit my daughter-in-law had called classic. I saw my wife's old locket on the dresser, the one I was going to give to my bride as a surprise after the vows. I thought about my son at 8 years old handing me a bent nail from the workshop and laughing when I made a ring from it. He used to want to be like me. Somewhere along the way, he chose to be like someone else. I stood there and listened to my breathing. It was even. Calm. That surprised me. I thought grief would crash in like a wave. It did not. What came instead was a line, simple and steady. I will not walk into a trap with my eyes closed. A knock came on the door. Rich? Are you ready? It was the event planner. I told her I needed 5 more minutes. My voice was level. I gathered the lilies into a vase so my hands would have something useful to do. Then I turned off the phone and slid it beneath a folded napkin. I looked once more in the mirror. I knew what I knew. They did not know that I knew. And for the first time in a long while, the advantage was mine. I forwarded the screenshots one last time, then reached for the doorknob. I found her in the bridal room fixing an earring. Her dress was pale champagne. She looked beautiful. I had loved that about her from the beginning. She had a way of making most rooms feel softer. There was a small box on the vanity that held her mother's hairpin. She smiled when she saw me. "You're not supposed to see me yet," she said, light and warm. "I know," I said. "I brought you the lilies." They were drying out. She laughed a little and set them in water. For a moment I wanted to forget everything. I wanted to be an old man in love and let the day be simple. But simple had just been taken from me. "Can I ask you something?" I said. I kept my tone gentle. My hands were loose at my sides. "Are you comfortable with the prenup? With how we're keeping what we each had before this day?" She looked at me, then past me, then at the mirror. "Of course," she said. "You know I never cared about any of that." Her voice was smooth, but her fingers told the truth. She fiddled with the hairpin. The metal clicked against the glass. Twice. 3 times. She never fidgeted. Not once, in all our dinners and trips and quiet afternoons on the porch, had I seen her hands shake. "I only ask because some people make plans around other people's money," I said. I wanted to hear how she would meet a simple sentence. "I can't build a life on that." She turned. "Rich, I'm marrying you, not your accounts." She stepped closer and straightened my tie. Her perfume was soft, familiar. "Let's not spoil this with business," she said. "Please." I looked into her eyes and tried to find the first night we met in them. The way she had asked about my wife and waited for the answer. The way she made a crooked picture frame straight without drawing attention to it. I searched for that careful person now. I found something else, a dart of impatience, a glance toward the vanity where her phone had been, a tightening in her jaw when I did not move. "Right," I said. "No business." I kissed her on the cheek. I put the locket in my pocket instead of around her neck. Then I stepped back and smiled. 5 more minutes, I told her. "I'll see you at the aisle." Her hand went to the vanity where the phone should have been. It was not there. Her fingers hovered over the empty spot. "Have you seen my phone?" she asked. "Not today," I said. I opened the door and stepped into the hallway, and for the first time, I was sure of one thing. Her words were sweet, but her hands told me the truth. The corridor felt longer than it was. I leaned against the wall where the light was soft and dialed a number I knew I could trust. David had been my neighbor once, then my friend, then the person who read the fine print for me when my eyes got tired. He was at the ceremony as a guest. He answered on the first ring. "Rich?" he said. "They're lining up." "Everything good?" "Not yet," I said. "I need you nearby." Quietly, I told him only what I had to. A message, my son's name, an itemized list, a promise of money tied to vows. I kept my voice even. He did not interrupt. When I stopped, there was a long breath on the other end. "Where's the phone now?" he asked. "In the bridal room," I said. "Or it was. She's looking for it." "Do you have a copy of the messages?" "Yes." "Then breathe, and do not confront anyone yet," he said. "Let me get to you." This was not about papers and clauses. This was about people and choices. I knew that. Still, I needed help steadying the ground under my feet. He said he would come to the north corridor by the service door. I looked down at my hands. They were steady, but my chest was tight. My son's name had never felt like a weight before. I hung up and put the phone back in my pocket. I could hear music from the courtyard. Guests were talking, a soft buzz like summer bees. A young usher hurried past with a stack of programs. He smiled at me without looking up. I felt strange standing there in a suit while the world thought I was about to walk into a happy scene. Part of me wanted to keep walking, out the side door, into my truck, drive to the cabin, close the door and let the waves do the talking. Another part of me stood still because I had loved my son since before he had a name. I had given him my time and my tools and the lesson that a line is a line no matter who crosses it. Today, he crossed it. The event planner found me. "We're starting in 5, she said. "Are you ready?" "Almost," I said. "I need a small delay. Tell them I want to change a vow. It will mean a lot to the family." She hesitated. Then she nodded. 20 minutes, she said. "No more." She turned and hurried away. I could feel everything pressing in. The music, the chatter, the expectation. And under it, a new thing rising in me. Not rage, not fear, a choice. When David turned the corner and saw my face, he did not ask more questions. He just stood beside me and waited for me to say what I was going to do next. We walked together to the small office near the kitchen. It had a copy machine and a desk and a window that looked out at the delivery driveway. The staff kept extra candles there, and the place smelled faintly of wax. He closed the door behind us and waited. "I am not walking into something blind," I said. "I need to see the whole shape of this." David nodded. Then we start with the facts we have. I pulled out my phone and opened the images. The thread sat there on the screen, plain as day. My son's name. The promise of half on wedding day, half after transfer. I hated the way the words made me feel, like I was not a person, but a gate he planned to push through. "Send those to me," he said. I did. I also stared at the timestamps. They were fresh, not weeks ago, not days, minutes. This was not a plan that had cooled. This was still smoking. "Rich," he said, quiet. "If you want to stop the ceremony, you can. You owe no one an apology for that." "I know," I said, "but I want to know who is standing against me before I stand up in front of them." He pointed at the screen. "This tells you more than enough about two people." I swallowed. He was right. I still needed to confirm one thing. I needed to be certain that the woman waiting in that room was part of this and not being used by it. I wanted one clean fact I could not misread. I stepped back into the hall and moved toward the bridal room. I slowed my breathing. I thought about my wife's locket in my pocket and how I had planned to start a new chapter with a simple promise. When I reached the door, it was cracked open. She was alone. She had set the lilies higher so the petals would not bruise. Her phone was on the vanity now, where she liked to keep it close. I knocked once and stepped inside. "They need 5 more minutes," I said. "The quartet is late." She smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. "You and your surprises," she said. She picked up the phone and checked the screen like someone checking the stove twice. "I left something in here," I said. I crossed to the vanity. I set my coat down. I looked at the locket and then at her hands. She turned to adjust her veil in the mirror. When she did, I slid the phone under my coat with a motion I learned from old life, where you sometimes had to move a small thing so a bigger thing could survive the day. It was not elegant. It was simple. It was enough. She turned back. "Rich?" "Ready as I'll ever be," I said. I lifted my coat. The phone was hidden beneath it. I walked to the door. "Wait," she said. "Have you seen—" I stepped into the hall before she finished the sentence, my heart steady and my hands no longer cold. I had what I needed to know, and I had the one object that could tell the truth to anyone who demanded it. I promised myself one thing. I would have my revenge, not petty, but clean, measured, and final. They would learn that you do not gamble with a man's life and family without consequence. You won't believe how brutal it is going to be really soon. But before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. I sat at the little office desk with David across from me. The copier hummed. A box of spare programs leaned against the wall. The window looked out on the delivery drive where a florist van idled. It all felt ordinary, which made what I held feel worse. I opened the images again. My son's name was plain. The list showed my house address, the cabin account number, even the pension account I had meant to leave untouched. The message read like an invoice. Half on wedding day, half after transfer. The timestamps were minutes old. David didn't need me to explain. He read faster than I did, and he frowned slower. He had been my neighbor for years. He had helped me check title deeds when my eyesight blurred. He was more lawyer in his head than he liked to admit, but tonight he was only a friend. "Was this sent from his phone?" I asked. "Yes," David said, "and it came from the phone sitting in her dressing room." He tapped the table. "Someone else might be involved. Or she might be part of it. Either way, this is not a joke." My hand shook a little as I set the phone down on the desk. I had not expected my son to be so direct. I had never expected him to make the exchange in writing and call it business. "What do you think he was counting on?" I asked. I felt foolish saying it out loud. That I would sign something at the altar? That I would hand over keys and accounts as if we were swapping recipes? David rubbed his jaw. People who plan theft this way assume the older person won't see. They assume ceremony blinds you. They assume blood gives them a pass. That is their first mistake. He reached for the venue printer and hit copy. The paper spat out. The thread looked smaller on paper than on the phone. That did not make it less real. It made it easier to hand to someone if I needed to prove I was not mad. We document the state of things, David said. We get witnesses. We keep copies. We do not storm the room. We control what the others see control. I thought of a man on a roof with a level. That image came because I had spent a life squaring things. Tonight I wanted to put the edges back on a situation that felt crooked. David looked up. Do you want me to call the bank? Put a temporary hold on outgoing wires? They can flag transfers tied to the account numbers on this list. The word bank sat heavy in the room. I had never liked banks, but I liked them more when they were a bulwark against a quick hand. Yes, I said, call them. Quietly, the copier hummed. David made one call and put a temporary hold on the wires. He nodded. Flagged. If they touch $1, the bank calls. That small fact settled over me like a lid. It was not a solution. It was not the end. But it was something that could stop an immediate theft. I looked at the lilies in the vase on the desk. They were bruised at the edges from the morning rush. I thought of my locket in my suit pocket. I thought of the man who had once handed me a bent nail and said, Dad, look what I found. I thought of how easy it had been to teach a child to hammer, and how different it was to teach a man not to take. Now I watched the messages move through the small world of the copier room to a quiet place where they could be kept. When I left the office, the printout was folded in my pocket. Knowledge had a shape now. We returned in 30 minutes. Back in the hallway, the music seemed louder. Guests were adjusting corsages. A child trailed ribbon behind her. I could feel the day press against my suit like a warm hand. My fingers closed around the phone in my coat. David stood in the shadow near the service door. He had a calm look on his face that I liked. He had the number I needed on speed dial. He had stepped into a role I did not ask for. He had been the friend who fixed my porch light at midnight. He was the friend I wanted near me now. You sure about this? He asked. Yes, I said. I want him to answer himself. I opened her phone the way one opens a medicine cabinet. The messages were still there. I typed a new line from her number. Half after vows. Confirm. My thumb hovered, and then I pressed send. The little circle spun. Then the reply came faster than I expected. Yes, Dad signs transfer. We wire. The words hit like a physical thing. They were not hypothetical. They were not a plan or theory. They were a promise. From my own son. David's jaw tightened. That's all you need, he said. That's direct. I felt a lurch in my chest. I had to remind myself to breathe. I had to move from the place inside me that wanted to blame and find the place that would act. What if she didn't know? David asked. What if he did this without telling her? Then she did not look like someone kept in the dark, I said. Her hands were nervous. She checked the room for her phone. She hemmed words when I asked about money. She was not the clear-eyed woman I thought I'd married. He looked at me for a long moment. Do you want to confront him now? Pull him out of the crowd? No. I shook my head. Not without more. I do not want a scene that leaves me blamed or pitied. I want truth to stand up without me yelling it. David nodded. Then we make sure the truth has teeth. What do you mean? We stop the wire. We keep the funds from leaving. We cut the quick path. He put his hand on my shoulder. It was a steady, quiet gesture. It was the same hand that had carried a bag of nails for me in rain one winter. It said more than any plan. I walked back into the bridal room and watched her fingers tremble as she smoothed her veil. I watched the space where the phone had been, now held safely in my coat. The test had not been cruel. It had been necessary. The reply sat on my screen like a promise of the kind of betrayal that did not keep its word. The confirmation was small and absolute. It made the risk clear. It made the stakes urgent. They planned to take what I had built the way a storm takes a porch roof. I kept the screen lit and showed David the message. His face did not change. He folded the phone and placed it carefully into his jacket pocket. "We're not in the dark anymore," he said. "We have him on record." His words made the choice obvious. I would not be easy to fool. The wire needed to be stopped. The hand reaching for my life needed to find that it could not move with ease. I straightened my suit. The lilies on the vanity trembled when I moved. The reply sat there in black and white. I could not unread it. The verification had been made. The risk was more real than ever before. And with the risk, there was my determination. The justice hammer will fall. "Do you want to stop the ceremony?" David asked. I looked at the paper. I could hear the violin warming up outside. "No," I said. "Not yet. First, I want a hand on the valve. If they try to drain me, it stops." I promised myself I'd be clean about this, I said. Measured. Final. No shouting. David nodded. He knew me. He had been there after my wife died, when I fixed the fence because my hands needed a job. He knew I keep moving when the floor tilts. "Then set one thing they have to face," he said. "Something they can't spin." On the way back to the dressing room, I passed my grandchildren. They were arguing about who would carry the ring. They looked up at me, grinning. I felt the old soft spot in my chest and also a hard edge under it. These little ones were not going to pay for our mistakes. I would see to that. When I stepped into the room, she was smoothing her veil. The lilies were starting to bruise at the tips. Her mother's hairpin caught the light. I laid the paper on the vanity beside it. No speech, no heat. "Sign this," I said, "and we marry for love." She glanced down, then up at me. The hall music swelled. A murmur rose in the courtyard. I did not blink. She placed her hand on the page and turned her face away, and for a breath I could not tell which way the day would go. She read what I had written. Her lips moved once, like she was tasting the words. Her fingers pressed the edge of the paper flat. I kept my hand still. I did not fill the room with reasons. I had already said the only one that mattered. She looked up. "You don't trust me." "I trusted you enough to ask," I said. My voice stayed low. "I trusted you enough to be clear. On my wedding day?" "No," I said. "On mine." The silence hung there. I felt each second like a tap on my chest. The locket warmed in my pocket. I wanted to give it to her. I wanted to believe she would wear it with clean hands. I wanted more than one thing at once, and that never ends well. Her eyes flicked to the spot where her phone had been earlier, then back to me. It was a small movement, but it told me plenty. I thought about the message. My son's name. The math of a man who forgot the difference between a father and a faucet. "You think I knew?" she said. Not a question. A statement with a coat of hurt on it. "I don't think," I said. "I read. And I watched your hands shake." She went very still. That old patience I loved drifted across her face and then broke. What was left looked like impatience and pride. She was good at making a room softer. She was not good at being cornered by the truth. "You're humiliating me," she whispered. "I'm protecting what I built," I said. "It took me 40 years to earn that right." She stared at me a long time. Then she put a finger to the paper as if to sign. Hope flashed through me like heat. She lifted the pen, set it down, lifted it again. I held my breath. Her hand fell away. "No," she said, "not like this." I felt something harden in me. It was not anger. It was a line. I have drawn lines my whole life. On joists, on plans, on floors. You do not cross one without knowing it. This is the only way, I said. Simple, plain, on the table where we both can see it. You don't get to make demands, she said. Not after everything I gave up to be here. I'm asking for a promise you can keep with a pen, I said. She stepped back, chin high. You'll regret this. I regret what got us here, I said. That's different. From the hall a cheer went up. Someone had opened the doors to the courtyard. The quartet started the first notes of the processional. It rolled through the walls like a tide. She took a breath and looked at herself in the mirror. She adjusted the veil. She did not touch the paper. You're coming? She asked. If you sign. She stared at me as if she could will me softer. She could not. Not today. Without another word, she walked past me and out into the light, leaving the paper on the vanity and the lilies bruising by the minute. I stood in the quiet room with the hairpin, the page, and the sound of guests standing. The day had picked a direction. I picked up the unsigned promise and folded it once, twice, and felt the crease set under my thumb. Michael came fast. He had that look he used to wear before a school fight. Red around the cheeks, shoulders forward. He stopped so close I could see a nick on his jaw where he had shaved too fast. Dad, he said, what are you doing? They say you're delaying. This is not your show. It is my wedding, I said. My voice stayed low. And my life. He gave a quick laugh. It had no humor in it. You're being dramatic. I stared at him. I thought about him at 10 in his soccer uniform, mud on his knees, smiling with all his teeth. I thought about him at 25, crying on my porch when his first business failed. I had rebuilt that life with him in small steps. He had learned the wrong lesson from that rescue. Half on wedding day, half after transfer, I said. You sent that. Something slid across his face, a crack, then the same smile. You read something you don't understand. I read my name. I read my house. I read your hunger. His hands opened and closed. He kept his voice low, but the heat in it rose. I've kept you afloat for years. I manage things you don't even see. You're old, Dad. You don't know how fast things move now. People expect respect, I said. They expect respect. He leaned in. You've had it easy. You hoard, you decide. And then you expect me to clap while you hand it to strangers. You owe your family. Family doesn't come with an invoice, I said. His eyes went cold. This is why Mom died, thinking you were stubborn. The sentence hit hard. It was meant to. He waited for me to flinch. I didn't. I let the weight pass through me. I had done my grieving already. I would not bargain with her memory. You wrote the message, I said, and you used her phone to do it. That is what we are talking about. You can't prove a thing, he said. David stepped from the shadow near the service door. He didn't say hello. He held up the phone. He held up the printed page. He didn't wave them like flags. He just showed them to the son I had raised. Michael's eyes flicked to the screen. It was my son's turn to feel small. He hit it fast. You went through her things, he said, loud enough for the closest usher to turn his head. That's abuse. No, I said. This is defense. A hush ran down the hall like a draft. The event planner's heels clicked as she came toward us. We need to start, she said to me. Now. I looked at my son and saw a man who thought speed could carry him past the truth. I saw a boy who thought winning was not getting caught. Stay close, I told David. He's going to deny it in front of them all. I won't need many words, David said. The planner's hand hovered near my sleeve. Sir? Gather the family, I said. I have something to say. Her eyes widened. She turned and hurried off. The quartet eased into a soft hold, like music learning to wait. The corridor narrowed. My son watched me with his mouth in a flat line. He didn't know what I would say when the doors opened. My daughter sat in front, fingers laced so tight her knuckles blanched. The kids pressed close to her hips. Michael took the back wall and crossed his arms like a barricade. She came last, chin high, dress catching light. She chose a seat near the aisle and kept her eyes off me. The lilies were still in the dressing room, bruising by the minute. Her mother's hairpin flashed in my mind like a warning. I did not ask for a microphone. I used the voice I had used over rafters and storms. I said who I was in the only way that mattered. A man who worked with his hands, who buried his wife, who saves slow and steady, who believes promises are not decorations. I did not say numbers. I said names. Home, work, wife, son. I said I came here to build a second life, not to watch the first taken apart. I held up the single page. My hands did not shake. Half on wedding day, half after transfer, I read. One line, that was all. A sound moved through the room, not words. A shift. The kind of murmur you hear when a car hits the brakes and everyone knows why without looking. Michael stepped forward. Context. One word, slippery as oil. I let it pass. Turning to the pew, I set her phone face up beside the printed page. The thread was not dramatic on a screen. It was small bubbles, plain type. But I had learned a house does not begin with the roof. It begins with small lines no one praises. These were those lines. I looked at the woman I was supposed to marry. Anything to say? She lifted her chin and held it there. You are humiliating me. I thought about the nights she had listened to me talk about my wife and handed me a clean cup when words ran out. I also thought about the way her eyes went to the empty spot on the vanity where her phone should have been. Both things could be true. Only one belonged here. I looked down the rows. Faces I had known for decades. Some hopeful, some angry, most tired already. They had come for cake and music and something called love. Instead, they were watching whether a man would keep his name. I did not fill the room with more talk. I have never believed in drowning a problem with words. I tapped the screen once. It woke like a small animal and showed the last line again. It did not blink. Now we look, I said. Together. A breath held. A door clicked in the hallway. Somewhere outside a child laughed, not knowing this room had stopped. I nodded to David. He stepped forward without a speech, and for a moment I saw the two kinds of men we were up against today, the ones who plan in quiet so things stay upright, and the ones who plan in quiet so things fall when it suits them. He put his thumb to the glass. We were about to find out which kind we were. The phone brightened. The bubbles glowed. No fanfare, just a short exchange that cut through the room. Half after vows. Confirm. Yes. Dad signs transfer. We wire. That was it. The line you cannot step back over once the print dries in the eye. Silence. Not the good kind. The kind after a lie hits air. Faces shifted. My daughter's hand lifted to her mouth. She made a sound I had not heard from her since she was 9 and broke her arm. A small, involuntary thing. The children watched her instead of the screen. That told me how this would land at home. Michael tried distance. It could be anyone, he said. Not a shout. A shrug in a sentence. My daughter turned. Enough. One word, and it carried a decade of strain. She looked at me next, not at him. There are moments when people choose where to stand. She had chosen. The woman I was supposed to marry stood. Her fists were tight at her sides. You all think I'm a thief? I loved him. I believe she had loved parts of me. The porch, the stories, the man who knew how to fix things. Love is not proof. Choices are. Own it, I said to my son. He stared a long time. Pride warred with caution. Pride won. I wrote it. 3 words. That was all he needed to say to end the theater. The room changed temperature. When truth finally shows up, it works like a door. Old air leaves, new air enters. You do not have to like the draft to be grateful for it. I looked at him and did not think about his first steps, or his first night away from home, or the nail rings we hammered in the garage. I thought about the men who had raised me, and how they would look at this boy now and ask me what I had failed to teach. He was still talking. "Planning isn't stealing," he said, softer, as if moving the volume would change the meaning. He tried on a smirk and it slipped. I didn't answer. Some words do not deserve an argument. I took in the whole room at once. My daughter's spine straight, my grandchildren gone quiet in a way I did not like, the almost bride calculating the angles, and my son, the man I raised, standing like a customer who believes a discount is a law of nature. I felt something in me settle. Not rage, not relief. A line. I had drawn them my whole life. On lumber, on floors, on decisions. I had asked enough questions for one day. I turned and reached for my jacket pocket. I had written the letters late the night before when the house was still and the day had not yet chosen a shape. One on thick paper, one on lined. It felt old-fashioned. It felt right. I wanted my words to be made of something that could not be edited by anyone but me. I handed the thick one to Michael. He took it like it might bite. He read fast, then slower. The color rose in his face from the collar up. Shock first, then anger, then something like fear, though he would never call it that. "You're cutting me off." A flat line, no decoration. Yes. One word for a lifetime of deposits that had turned generosity into expectation. "You can't." "I can." He blinked, as if the air quality had changed. He had lived a long time on a certain weather. He did not recognize this climate. "You'll run back," he said, trying on the boy's swagger. "You always do." Not anymore. No heat, no lecture. Just the boundary I should have set when he was young and testing the fence. I turned to the woman I had planned to marry and held out the second letter. She hesitated, then took it. My apology and my no were written in the same hand. I wanted her to know both were real. "What is this?" she asked, softer now. "An ending that won't make us worse," I said. She pressed the paper to her chest and looked at the door like she could walk out of today and into another where nobody had asked her to choose. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Pity is a cousin of permission. I had run out of both. David met my eye. He didn't nod. He didn't need to. He has always known when a job is done and when to put the tools away. I slid the unsigned promise into my jacket beside my wife's locket and the printed line that had turned the day. Those things felt heavy together. They should have. My daughter touched my sleeve. "Come home," she whispered. No lecture, no plan. Just a place to sit that wasn't this room. I looked once more at the two people who had stood shoulder to shoulder a few minutes ago and now avoided each other's eyes. Greed makes strange partners. It also makes lonely ones. As I stepped into the corridor, the late light hit me clean. The quartet, unsure whether to play or pack, plucked a string and then went still. For the first time all day, I drew a full breath. I had not chosen the fight, but I had chosen the finish. And outside that small chapel, with the crowd murmuring and the flowers starting to droop, I understood something simple and final. My life would not be gambled for anyone's quick win, not even my son's. I woke before the sun and made coffee. The suit jacket hung over a chair. The 3-line paper lay on the table, still unsigned. My wife's locket sat beside it. I closed my hand around the locket until the edges pressed my skin. My phone lit with calls I chose not to take. I sent David a short note. "I'm steady. No meetings. No speeches." My daughter texted, "We're making pancakes. The kids want you." "Be there in 20, I wrote back. Their kitchen smelled like butter and syrup. The kids told me a terrible joke about a dog that likes broccoli. I laughed. It felt real enough. My daughter squeezed my wrist once and didn't force words on the morning. After we ate, my granddaughter tugged my sleeve. "Garden?" We watered the basil and checked the roses. "Will you teach me the cabin?" she asked. Yes, I said. This summer, and next, we will take pancakes. She smiled and ran inside to tell her brother. The simple future set its hook. I stopped by the venue to return the ring. The manager was kind. I didn't reschedule. Some days you don't shift, you end them clean. I took out a pen and a yellow pad from the drawer by the window. I wrote 2 letters, one to Michael, so there would be no drift in my voice. I told him I loved the boy he had been. I told him I would not fund the man he had chosen to be. I told him I would answer calls about birthdays and emergencies, not money. The second was to myself. It was short. Keep your gait. Keep your peace. Keep your promise to the little ones. I slid both letters under a paperweight shaped like a fish my wife had bought at a roadside market, and I stood. The cabin was not fancy. It was clean. It was mine. It would be theirs one day, if they learned to hold a thing without breaking it. I didn't cancel a wedding. I closed a vault, and the hands that reach for it will never touch it again. It wasn't the ending I planned. It was the life I finally chose to keep. When love and respect split, which one do you keep? Did I go for the correct path? Share your thoughts in the comment section.
My grandpa's words really happened. I believe him. If you want more true tales stories like this, hit subscribe.